Welcome back. In my last video, I had started with the conceptual dependency representation. We had seen the components of conceptual dependencies. Okay, the components are uh, you have some set of primitive acts like a trans, p trans, propel, move, grasp, ingest, expel, m trans, mbuild, speak, attend. Then there are some set of conceptual categories. There are basically four categories. ACT for the primitive actions, PP, picture producer. These are the objects who are involved in the sentences. They are the actors who will produce different acts. PAs are the modifiers of PP. These are picture aiders or supporting properties or attributes of these actors or producers. And AA, these are action aiders or modifiers of action. They are the supporting properties or attributes of the action themselves. Then there were conceptual relationships also that we had seen. O for object case relation, R for recipient case, D for destination relation, I for instrument. And the fourth category, conceptual, the fourth component, I'm sorry, is conceptual tenses. P for past tense, F for future tense, transition, start transition, finish transition, continuing, interrogative, negative, nil. When you don't write anything, it means it's a present tense. Delta means timeless, C for conditional. Okay, and just to begin with, okay, this is an example of a conceptual dependency representation of an English sentence. I gave a book to the man. Okay, now in this particular video we are going to see how can we represent English sentence in this particular CD representation. Basically there are 14 rules that we are going to see, and after applying these rules as and when required, you get this kind of form. But the beauty of this conceptual dependency representation is, okay, that suppose you have a sentence, the original sentence is I gave a book to the man, but it can be also said like this: I gave the man a book, or the man got book from me, or it can be also said as the book was given to man by me, and so on. For all such sentences, there is only one unique CD representation. Okay. Before we continue, there are few conventions that you need to see. Arrows, they indicate directions of dependency. Double arrows indicate two-way link between actor and action. Wherever you see O, it is used for the object case relation. R is used for recipient case relation. P for past tense. F for future tense. And D for the destination relation. The first rule is of this type: PP, bidirectional arrow, ACT, where PP is the picture producer or this the object, and ACT is the action. So it describes the relationship between an actor and the event he or she causes. Okay, it's a rule which is used to describe relationship between an actor and the action that he or she does. Example: John ran. Okay, so when I say ran, when you say run, it is movement of an object from one place to other. So what is the act which will be used for ran? It will be p trans. Okay, so the CD representation for this sentence is John p trans. Okay, and since ran is in past tense, you will see p written on top of this double arrow, bidirectional arrow. Note that it should be small p, not capital P. This is a mistake. Okay, so rule 1 is used to describe relationship between an object and the action that it performs. Running is moving an object from one physical location to other, so it's a p trans. Okay, transfer of physical location. Let's move on to the second rule, PP. Now note that this is a special kind of bidirectional arrow. There is also another line here. a special notation. So second rule, PP, PA. So it describes the relationship between a PP, that's an object, and a PA that is asserted to describe it. What is PA? It is called as picture aiders. It is a special property, or it's a supporting property that aids the understanding of the object PP, right? So it describes a relationship between a PP and a PA that is asserted to describe it. Now what is PA? PA may represent the states of PP, such as his height, his health, his weight, and so on, his complexion, and so on, the physical properties of the object. Those are PAs. So whenever you want to represent object and its physical property, then you can use this rule too. Okay. For example, here John is fat. Now fat is a physical property of John. So this rule can be used. So what is the meaning of fat? Let's assume that anybody whose weight is greater than 80 kilos is fat. So this can be represented as John weight greater than 80. So when weight is greater than 80, this means fat. So John is fat can be represented using rule 2 in this particular manner. John, okay, and weight which is greater than 80. This means fat. Rule number 3. Now this is a special rule that describes the relationship between two PPs, okay, object and another object, one of which belongs to the set defined by the other. Okay, so whenever there are two PPs, whenever there are two objects and one of which belongs to the set defined by the other, then use this rule. For example, John is a doctor. Now basically doctor is a set. Okay, there are two PPs here. One object or PP is John, second object or PP is doctor. But John belongs to the set called as doctor, right? So this can be written as John doctor. Okay, PP PP. It describes relationship between two PPs. So John is a doctor. It can be written like this: John doctor. Okay, in which one of which belongs to the set defined by the other. Doctor is a set. John belongs to the set doctor. Rule number 4. Now this is a special rule. It describes the relationship between a PP or an object and an attribute that has already been predicted of it. This is an attribute of the object. Okay, and there is a arrow which you can write like this in rule number 4. Now you will be asking me, we have already seen in rule number 2, okay, there is already a rule 2 that describes PP and PA, okay, object and its PA, right? Then again, why do we have another rule where again object and its PA is discussed? Note that rule number 2 that we saw, in that PA represents some physical state of the object. Now, when I say physical state, something related to his physical body, say his height, his weight, his complexion, and so on. Rule number 4, this rule is basically used when PA is nothing but it's an attribute. It need not be it is not the physical property. It is an attribute that has already been predicted of it. Okay, it's a predicted attribute. For example, if you are good is your attribute. If you are intelligent, intelligence is your attribute. Okay, if you are nice is your attribute. So whenever you have such kind of sentences, only then rule number 4 is used. Example, a nice boy. Okay, where boy is PP or the object and nice is an attribute or PA that has been already predicted of it. People have predicted that boy is nice. Okay, it's an attribute, it's not a physical property. Okay, so it can be written now as nice boy. That means boy is nice with the F, PP, PA. Rule number 5, it is used when there are two PPs involved. Okay, it describes the relationship between two PPs, one of which provides a particular kind of information about other. Okay, now you must be thinking that we have already seen a rule wherein there were two PPs involved. I'll go back to the previous slides. Rule number 3. Here we have already seen a rule where two PPs were involved. But the difference is rule 3 is used when this PP belongs to this set. For example, John was a object and John belonged to a bigger object set, that is doctor. Okay, but rule number 5 that we are going to see now is the rule wherein both these objects are totally different. PP may be John and this PP may be somebody else, maybe his dog. Okay, so basically this rule is used to describe the relationship between two PPs, one of which provides particular kind of information about other. Now what information we are talking about? There are three kinds of information that can be provided. One is possessed by or pos underscore by. So when you write pos underscore by here, it simply means that this PP or this object is possessed by this object. Second kind of information is LOC. LOC stands for location. It just, when it is written here, it just tells the location of the first object with respect to the second object. And CONT, it stands for containment. It tells you which object is contained in which object. As an example, John's dog. Okay, now John is one PP, dog is another PP, but when it is John's dog, the dog is possessed by John, right? So it can be written like this. So please don't read it this way. John is not possessed by dog, it is dog which is possessed by John. Always read from top to the bottom. Okay, so John's dog means this PP, that is dog, is possessed by John, right? So here dog is a different PP, John is a different PP, and possessed by is the relationship that is established between dog and John. The relationship is that dog is possessed by John. John is owner of the dog. Rule number 6 is a very interesting rule. As you can rightly see, there is O written on top of this arrow, and O defines object relation. It simply means ACT is the action and this PP is an object which is involved in this particular action. So what is rule number 6? It simply describes the relationship between an act and the PP. Okay, and O is the object of the action, act, right? Just as an example, say John pushed the cart. Now when this sentence is there, okay, you can read it. See, when you want to convert this whole sentence, okay, you first read only the first half. John pushed. Only read the first half, that is John pushed. So if you want to represent what is pushed, pushing is an action and John is an object. So using rule number 1, you can just go back and see. Using rule number 1, you can represent this as John okay, and when I say push, what action is used for push? It what is used? Propel. Right? So using rule number 1, we first consider this particular part of sentence. John pushed. John propel. Now pushed means it is in past tense, so you have to write small p on top of this. It means John propelled. Okay. Now rule number 6 tells you who is the object involved in this action. So John pushed what? The cart. So cart is the object. So for this particular, sorry, uh, for uh, for this particular action, who is the object involved? Object involved is cart. Yes, I'm really sorry. I'm writing using the mouse, so it becomes very difficult for me. But I'm trying to do it. I'm sorry. Okay. So John pushed the cart can be written like this. John is the object and push is the action. So using rule 1, John propel. Pushed is in past tense, so P is written on top of it. And rule 6 is now used to specify who is the object involved in the action. So it is cart which is involved in pushing action. So action is propel and the object used here is cart, PP. Yes. So John propel cart. Is it clear? Rule number 7. Now this is slightly interesting. As I've already told you, R is what? It's a recipient action. R is nothing but it's a recipient action. So this rule is basically used to convey who is the sender, which object PP is the sender, and which object PP is the receiver. Please see the arrow. Arrow goes from here. It goes towards this PP. So this is the source of the action. This is the destination of the action. He is the giver and he is the recipient. So this is R relation, recipient relation. So for a particular act, who is the giver and who is the recipient? So rule 7 is basically used for that. So it describes the relationship between an act and the source and the recipient of the act. Okay. Now as an example, John took the book from Mary. Okay. Now there are few things that I want to tell you. You always consider the first part of the sentence. John took. Now when I say took, to take something, to give something, what kind of action it is? It is abstract transfer or a trans. So using rule number 1, okay, using rule number 1, you can write here John took. So it is a transfer of abstract relationship. A right. So John took. Now, so A trans is the action taking. Now, rule number 6 that we had seen earlier, that rule was describing the relationship between an action and the object which is involved in the action. So the action here is A trans, that is taking. Now, which is the object involved in this took action? It is the book. So the object involved in this action of taking, you will specify with O relation. Object here is book. Agreed? And finally, you have to now specify who is the sender and who is the receiver. Now John took the book from Mary. So basically it is Mary who gave the book to John. Okay. So for this act, A trans, the recipient relation, I'm really sorry, I cannot draw it tidily, but recipient relation, who is the source and who is the destination, who is the sender, who is the receiver? Mary. So book was given by Mary, and who is the recipient? John. Okay, so John A trans, object involved in this transfer is book, and a book went from Mary to John. Notice that I have written P here because the action here is performed already in the past, so it's a past tense action, and that's why P. If I don't write anything here, then it will be considered as a present tense. Rule number 8. Now this rule is basically used when you are going to describe the instrument of action. Okay, so it describes the relationship between an act and the instrument with which the act is performed. So it describes the relationship between the act and the instrument with which the act is performed. For example, John ate the ice cream with a spoon. Okay, now whenever you want to represent such sentences, you need to break this. First you say John ate. Okay, use rule number 1 that describes the relationship between the object and an action. So it will become John, and ate means ingest, right? Now for this ingest action, what is the object of ingestion? It is ice cream, and ice cream was ingested using what instrument? A spoon, right? So, and again see, it's a past tense, ate is past tense. So John ate. Ate means ingest, past tense. Object involved in ingestion is ice cream, and the instrument used in the action of ingesting is what? Now please see, do John. That means while John was doing the act of eating, the object involved in doing the action of ingesting is spoon. Do John tells that John was doing the act of ingesting, and the instrument used for that action, the object, was the spoon. Okay. Rule number 9. Now this rule, it describes the relationship between the act and the physical source and the destination of the object. Okay, so two pp's, this is the source and this is the destination. So the relationship which is used here is destination relation, and this is the act. For example, John fertilized the field. Okay, so the meaning of fertilized is it is what? The fertilizer is present in the bag. Okay, and fertilize means John has physically removed the fertilizer from the bag and he has sprinkled it onto the field. Okay, so what is the action? The action used here is P trans, right? P trans means physical transfer. So John fertilized the field. So John fertilized, it's a past tense. Okay, so what he did, he physically transferred the object, that is fertilizer. Why it is P trans? Because the fertilizer was moved from the source, that is bag, and it was taken to the field and sprinkled. Okay, John fertilized. Okay, and the destination relation is the fertilizer from the bag was moved into the field. Okay, so this is how rule 9 can be described. So that is it for today's lecture. Thank you.